And the problem is going to reveal itself in the next episode, but we'll talk a little bit about it now. Because on their way in, they passed, I can't remember her name. Do you remember her name, the prostitute?
Oh, Kelly?
Something like that. Callie or Kelly or Chrissy or something like that. I don't remember. Yeah. But yeah, so she sees both Seabass and Choo Choo on the way out because she was paying a visit to Calhoun before they arrived. And now Calhoun's dead. She would have been one of the last people to see him alive. And she knows who the last people to see him alive were. So that's a problem that's going to have to be resolved. And we'll see how that gets resolved, I think, here in the next episode, actually. And it still doesn't advance the plot of this any further, right? Because you've still got now the Markham gang not knowing who is interfering in their plans to acquire that real estate. I also wanted to look up SERE training. And so that's a real thing. SERE training. It's a survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. It's U.S. military personnel to survive in and return with honor in survival scenarios. And so it's survival skills, evading capture, application of the code of conduct, techniques for escape from captivity. Really interesting to read about it and to read about the sort of, I don't want to call it brainwashing necessarily, but it's sort of what's being ingrained in these soldiers during this training, right? During the evasion, resistance, and escape phase, because they talk about, hey, it's preparedness in knowing what happens if you get taken prisoner. And there's this thing called the Code of the United States Fighting Force. Have you ever heard of this?
Yes, I have.
Oh, you have? Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah. So there's a couple of things in here that I thought were really interesting as part of the Code of the United States Fighting Force. So basically the whole idea is you don't surrender. You're prepared to give your life in defense of America and, the forces that are guarding America. But there's a one item here. If I am captured, I will continue to resist by all means available. I will make every effort to escape and to aid others to escape. I will accept neither parole nor special favors from the enemy. And then the final one, of course, is I will never forget that I am an American fighting for freedom, responsible for my actions, and dedicated to the principles which made my country free. I will trust in my God and in the United States of America. And so this is the sort of thing that's ingrained in these people who are fighting and could potentially be taken prisoner. It's sort of a, for lack of a better way to say it, it's sort of a forced zealotry, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is that makes you super loyal and you're not going to give any information away. And, you'll not become a burden on the forces who would need to rescue you, right? That sort of thing. Yeah, you're not putting the forces that haven't been compromised already at risk. But it's an interesting sort of dichotomy as you start to think about it. Like, you're required to give name, rank, service number, and date of birth, but you don't have to answer any other questions, and you should evade answering or lie, or don't make any statements disloyal to your country, no matter what, and all of these things. Like, it's not about your own personal interest at that point. It's about what's good for the Corps or the country or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. It's an interesting mentality. I can't empathize with it because I've never been in that situation, but it does feel a little unusual to me.
Well, that was the whole thing with John McCain. Way back. Cause he was tortured and, I forgot what group it was. It might've been like the John Birch Society, they were like, they called him, they said that he was, ratting out, like giving up all the information.
He was a cooperator or whatever.
Yeah. They called him Songbird and all this other stuff. It was just interesting that, most people think of him as an American hero. I'm I don't know. I mean, the guy later in life never found a war he didn't want us to get into.
Right.
So.
And you would think that as somebody who was held as a prisoner of war and, very familiar with the real repercussions of that he would be trying to avoid war at all costs. But no, he was very much interested in war.
And you know what? I think 24 was one of the first TV shows to talk, like, because this was after 9/11 and everything else, and they brought, like, people would call that show 24 with Kiefer Sutherland, because it would always be Jack Bauer having to torture somebody.
Yeah,
he'd be getting tortured.
Yep.
But my understanding was that torture really isn't effective if you're trying to get information. Even in a ticking time bomb scenario, it's not effective. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, does it work? Maybe the threat of torture might, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think what does work is the threat of torture with some understanding that it might actually happen. I think that's what works, and whether it should or it shouldn't. And I think that's why we had to put ourselves in that position where we were torturing people, which is such a weird, thing for us to say. I don't agree with that. I don't think that should have been happening at all. I don't care what the scenarios are. It's not, look, you can't in one hand say that you're fighting for freedom, responsible for your actions, and dedicated to the principles which made my country free, and then in the other hand, torture someone. I don't think that aligns. It doesn't line up. So,
yeah.
But so we've got a dead Calhoun Schreier, which will certainly get law enforcement involved. And Choo Choo and Seabass have themselves a little bit of a jackpot here.
They got to roll them up in a carpet and take them out of the place.
They do. They do, in fact, have to roll them up in a carpet and take them out of the place. We'll talk more about that next week. But it's very reminiscent of the Pine Barrens episode of The Sopranos. So, and then Raylan escorts Ava home. Where she's going to make dinner. This was also sort of our food of the week here. Fried chicken and sweet potatoes for dinner after that breakfast. If she doesn't turn Boyd over to the cop, she's going to give him a heart attack. So either way, problem solved. Or diabetes, exactly.
That's a
damn it, Ava, I'm going to lose this foot.
You got an amputee. I mean, that's how she could escape, right? Put him in a diabetic coma.
Exactly.
Just leave.
And just disappear. Yeah.
Just disappear.
He's in insulin shock. I'm out of here.
Yeah. I'm out.
He smells like he's drunk. Yeah. So they have a little bit of a conversation here at the end, and I have a clip of this. It's a little bit of a kind of, I don't know. It's a good conversation, but the reason I have it is because of what happens at the end, and I'll play that.
You happy? I'm home, safe. You can go now.
No, not till I know you ain't gonna wake up tomorrow morning and run again.
I ain't gonna wake up tomorrow morning and run again.
Ava, this ain't gonna work if there's no trust.
Oh, so now we're gonna have a trustful relationship. You want me to believe that you're gonna keep me out of danger when here you are putting me right back in it.
The truth is, this is the safest place you could be. Right here next to Boyd. Anywhere else, you're in trouble.
The truth is that you don't give a shit about me. You just care that I don't jeopardize your precious case against Boyd.
There are plenty of people. Make sure Boyd pays for the suffering he has caused.
Then why are you here? What's in it for you?
Finishing the job. What you and me started together. And that is how we're going to finish it. Together.
Then what?
That's up to you. What do you want?
I want cash. 100 grand.
That's a bit much. Aim for 50.
And I want out of the country. No Witzik deal. I'll pick the place, you make it happen.
I can promise you that I will find you a place where you are safe. You can be happy. And where you can start over. Now, isn't that what you want?
There's got to be a place in hell for a man that breaks a promise to a woman.
I ain't worried.
You gonna take care of me? Like you did when you came to my door after Bowman. Answer to my prayers.
And then Ava kisses him. And he says he's going to stick around and wait for Boyd to come home. And Ava's like, what? I'm sorry, you're going to do what? And yeah, that's the end of the episode. So the reason I clipped that is because I'll just, note a little bit of foreshadowing here. Raylan makes a promise to Ava here that I can promise you, he says. And the title of the finale of season 6 and Justified is called The Promise. So I'm guessing there's a correlation there.
Maybe.
Between those two things. Stay tuned and we'll find out. Yeah. If you haven't watched it already. Yeah, so let's see. That's the end of the episode. So Raylan's going to stay to confront Boyd and maybe enjoy some fried chicken also. And
fried chicken in quotation marks, right?
That's right. Yes. That's sweet fried chicken. Yeah. A couple of things that I didn't mention. Bob had to pawn his AK to buy his new patrol car. I was kind of bummed for Bob. Yeah, I think the world's a little safer without Bob rolling around with an AK, though. I do.
Oh man, even with that taser, he's just he's a rolling
he's a menace.
Yeah.
I still, that scene in season 4 when he's shooting at the guys in the house from the driveway. It's just so ridiculous. I forgot both our word of the week and our Kentucky Fried Wisdom moment. So let me play our word of the week here.
You use your tongue prettier than a $20 whore.
Mikey brings us our word of the week because he's playing with Scrabble with Win early in the episode.
That's right.
And he plays a PLEX, a plex, and 28 points. Boom. And Win says, that's not a word, Mikey. And Mikey says, it is. He aplexes me. Which, of course, is the argument for anything in Scrabble.
Yes.
Use it in a sentence, baby. So I do love poor dumb Mikey. And then our Kentucky Fried Wisdom moment of the week, of course.
Say, boy, you cover about as much as a flapper's skirt in a high wind. Pay attention, boy. Look at me when I'm talking to you, son. Look, sister, is any of this filtering through that little blue bonnet of yours? Pay attention, son. Look at me when I'm talking to you. After
Wynn finishes torturing poor Albert, he sits him down on the bed and tells him that he's free to go and they're not going to have to kill him. And he says, hey, look at it this way. Look on the bright side. Maybe you can still get it up for Cindy. Which I would imagine is a little bit of a challenge after being cattle prodded multiple times. Guessing getting it up for a stranger is, because I'm not someone who utilizes services of prostitutes. So I'll ask you, do you ever have any trouble when you're with a stranger?
No, you got to slap them cheeks. That's what you got to do. Now, as somebody who lives in a city that's notorious for having what you would call prostitutes, yes, everywhere,
sex workers.
Literally, yes. I can't tell you that having never engaged in the services of one, but just talking to some, yeah. They're always if you have a big enough bankroll, they're up for anything.
Yeah,
that's what I'll tell you.
Yeah, I would imagine that if you're not a person who is experienced in that area, right? If you're seeing a prostitute for the first time, I would imagine there's some anxiety there. You probably have a little bit of trouble. And poor Ficus has now been tased and tortured on top of everything. So, the question is whether he needs to work out that negative energy or if he's just a little too anxious to get it up. We'll see.
I think if you tase like that, it might even be one of those things where it enhances the experience.
It's like Jamie Foxx and Spider-Man or whatever. You become superpowers.